it over to you folks. So, okay, well, it started the transcription, so I guess that means we're on. So yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this session on DH project. So this is so these students who are here today, all graduate students in our MA program in the English department, were in my Introduction to Digital Humanities course in the fall semester. And so because of the nature of the course, what they do is build some sort of a web project. So it can take various forms. In this particular class, everyone did the same thing. Everybody basically built a website. And so they were great. Got three people, three of those students here today to show you what they did. You all should be able to share if you look up in the upper right-hand corner. And then depending on how much time we have, I do have access to some of the other projects that were made, so we could take a quick look at those. And then, have some time for some questions if you want to know more from them about their projects, how they did it. I think we could probably even ask them along the way rather than wait till the end, since we've just got three people right now. So anyway, but I want to introduce them. So we've got Sarah Santos Costa, we've got Beth Torello, and we've got Carter Bryant. So I think we could just kind of go in that order, right? This is the way I see you on my screen. That way, I know we don't all see each other in the same order, but there you are in my order. So Sarah, whenever you're ready to get started.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Santos Costa, and I'm very excited to share this project. My website, let me start sharing first. I'm on my iPad, so it's a bit different. Share, okay. Share screen. Can you guys see already or not?
No, you went to no camera mode base. Up, there we go. Hold on, here it comes. Just being a little fussy. Okay.
What do you guys see?
We see screen broadcast, Microsoft sort of spinning.
Okay.
We used to call it buffering in the old days. Up, there we go. Sort of. We're kind of in a weird place. Up, there we go. Yes, great.
You got it? Okay.
Yes.
So the project calls Exploring Brazilian Literature, which reflects my academic journey, my cultural background, and my passion for literature. The website has this flag of Brazil, and then there's a welcome saying we explore cultural, social, and historical aspects of specific and relevant Brazilian literary works. So I'm Brazilian, of course, and currently I'm pursuing my master's in English here in Sion Hall, which means out of my country. And I wanted to use digital humanities to create a resource that highlights key literary works from my country, from Brazil, that is as powerful as many other readings and literatures that I've seen throughout this my program, and that it's not as accessible here in United States due to the lack of translation to English. So my idea here in the website is to guide and share a little bit of articles and literature and the context all together. So to integrate all these aspects. So here in the homepage, you can see there is a Brazil map, and then of course, my project is not done. So I only started, and I'm gonna show you the idea of this project, my goals and everything like that. So here's the Brazil map, and then once you zoom in, you can see there's some pins, and then the idea is that when you click on the pins, it's gonna lead you to some literatures that talks about the region that they are from, or the literature that the author works about. So each pinpoint can lead you to the next section that is gonna explain and show you some historical information and introduce you to some analysis and excerpts from the literature. And I could work on three, basically two. Uh, Here, there's another way to go through the literature too. Besides the map that is up here, you can read literary works, and then you can see that it's alphabet organized. I'm gonna go with this Islam just because it's the one that I most work with. Um, so the Islam reading in 1890 has explores race and post abolition in Rio de Janeiro, and is from Aloysio de Azevedo. And to start here, I used a story map, which you can explore the literature with some pictures, with some excerpts, and a little bit of uh, the location where this occurs. So here you're gonna see that the slum, it's from Rio de Janeiro, portraying a poor community, and there's some pictures that can lead you a little bit through, such as the slum, and then below the picture is you can see some excerpts from the book that describes, and on your left is going to be always a little bit of where in Rio de Janeiro is situated, so the cities or states, and then you can keep going with the characters, so João Romão, and what the excerpts also already portrayed a little bit how was how was in this example Bertoleza, so she was a black slave, and then the book portrays a little bit of how she was between the poor, not the rich. Here is some more a bit the characters and where it happens, and then if you keep going through, by the end you're also gonna have uh, kind of a bibliography of the author. And then my idea is that each page can lead and can give to the user some reading recommendations. So I want them to explore as I could do with digital tools, but most of all I want to give further research, portraying with articles that talks about political, social, and historical aspects of Brazil, and that are reflected in each literature that is chosen. So here I could grab some. Most of the literatures that I found are already translated into English, but not all. And then my idea is that the user can be also a collaborator. So I would invite the user to leave a feedback, but also to collaborate with maybe translating some articles that are already there, or maybe just um, adding some articles or some more literature or some more historical information, or keep going with further literature to add. Um, I have another example of how that can work. Here's Captains of the Sands, and then this one is from Jorge Amado. And here, instead of starting with a story map, I decided to grab some main words that are seen in the first chapter, and I'm putting a word count. And from that, you can create a summary of this chapter. So these words can be used definitely to explain what happens in the plot. And then for the Captains of the Sand, there is a movie adaptation. So I put here the trailer. which is also another digital tool. And then again, you're gonna see reading recommendations that are also mostly in English already, mostly translated, but there could be also in Portuguese, leaving space for the user to be a collaborator as a translator. Here's the feedback again. The same is for the next page, Bearing Lives. That is that's the everything that I have. And then here in the library, you can see that there's a way to explore more literary works from Brazilian authors that are already chosen. So, Aloysio de Azevedo, if you click here, you can go to the website where it's gonna where it's gonna give you another brief bibliography and some of his books. The thing is, the pages are always like some works are English, some are just Portuguese. So it's also something that I would invite the user to help me, since my intention is to bring that to English speakers. And then, well, it keeps going with the other two authors that I chose. Um, and here you're gonna see there's another page called Collaborate, which is basically again inviting the user to be a collaborator and leaving his informations or comments so I can reach out or they can reach me out too. And then we can work on that. There's another one that is about and is about the project. How did it start? As I already said, that is from my experience, and then also a little bit about me and how they can reach me out. And I think, well, overall, this project allows users to engage with the literary texts through multiple modalities, so visual, textual, and analytical. And the content that I am aiming to put there is open to anyone who wants to explore Brazilian literary works or contribute to it. And the goal is to equip the platform with accessibility features for all users and to offer an innovative approach that combines Brazilian literary analysis with these digital platforms and tools. So that's basically the project. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. So I was negligent. I did this the last time too at NJCA. I forgot to sort of lay the groundwork in any way for what was actually coming. So I should tell you very quickly, and then maybe give some time for you to ask Sarah any questions. One, so this Intro to Digital Humanities class is both a theoretical class. What is digital humanities? What do we mean by that? We read all kinds of articles. Generally, there's a whole series of books about digital humanities that come out of these scholars from CUNY. And so we read essays of all different kinds. We talk about things like accessibility. We talk about sort of biases within metrics and within databases and so on. Then the other half of each session is a workshop. And we learn tools. We learn how to play with tools. We, acquire all kinds of skills. So the goal of the course is they have to do something digital. So again, in this class, they all opted to do a website, which is the first time that's ever happened for me. Some people have done other things. The project obviously can't be done completely because once we get underway, they have about 7 or 8 weeks, really. Once we get started, they figure out what they want to work on. It doesn't have to be literary. It can be anything. I tell them what we basically tell them when they're going to start their thesis. Love it because you're going to spend a lot of time on this topic. So pick a topic you really are invested in. They have to incorporate two tools into the project. They should have contact info. They should be thinking about accessibility. There is a tool you can use to test for that and adjust for that. There should be something about them. So there are all these different pieces. And the final paper for this course is actually a grant proposal that is a modified version of the NEH grant application that they all complete and submit, except for the budget, which I don't ask them. I tell them, imagine you're asking for $250,000. So, go for the gold. And so always hope they'll continue to develop them. Some have. I've had students who keep on building them, but anyway, so that was the that's the groundwork for what you just saw, and why Sarah has certain things, because you're going to see some of the same elements on in a different way when you see Beth's and when you see Carter. So, do anybody have questions for Sarah before we move on? And you can always ask later too, but if you've got questions now, we could do them at the moment. Okay. All right. That's fine. Well, if something comes up, let us know. All right. So, Beth, you are up next.
Okay, great. Let's see. Just gonna try and share my screen. Let's see. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. So yeah, my presentation website kind of really stemmed out of my thesis that I'm working on, but it kind of went beyond that as well. So my thesis is really invested in Tolkien's environment, specifically the trees and the mountains. But after talking with Dr. Balkin, we kind of expanded it a little bit past there, and then even beyond that, and left room for growth in the future. So the first thing is I decided to build my website on Wix just because the platform plays a big part into how the user is going to navigate with it, but also the design experience for me as a DH student. And Wix was just the one I found the most user-friendly. And I also, a big part of it was that I have an account already. So this is something I can go back and continue to access and build over time. Whereas I know one of the issues we had was Adobe, you kind of lose the licensing to that once you graduate. So you kind of start on the homepage, and Tolkien, if you don't know, has quite a few works to his name, and the most popular are The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And I found when I was doing my environmental scan that a lot of the literature out there is specifically on those two works, and there's really not a lot on the rest of them, including the Silmarillion, which is kind of his Bible, so to speak, about his world and kind of the history that takes place there. And in terms of DH projects, there's really nothing on the topic at all. So I wanted to make a place where it was more so focused on this kind of origins of his world. So Tolkien, by his own admission, was very much into environmentalism. And so I put this quote right here at the beginning: I speak for the trees against all their enemies. And it really just kind of sets the tone about what his work's going to be. But the artwork behind it, as well, is pretty intentional because it's one of his watercolor paintings that he did. So if we go through it, just kind of laid the groundwork for who is Tolkien. I really had Tolkien scholars in mind when I was building this website, as most of them are the ones that are reading the Silmarillion. It's not necessarily the everyday fan, but in case somebody just stumbled upon it, kind of gave some background about who Tolkien was, but also what the Silmarillion is. And one of the resources I chose to use was an outside YouTube video, just a link about Tolkien's environment in general and kind of why we're looking at that. I also included buttons throughout the website, as you're going to see, that kind of just have the link to the Silmarillion PDF so that the user can kind of follow along. A big part of it was also tying it into the humanities as a large. Didn't just want to kind of say, oh, here's Tolkien's environment, and I think that's really cool. Wanted to take it a step further and say, why does this matter? Why should somebody, even if they're not a fan of Tolkien, be engaging with his environment? And so you'll see there's kind of links throughout, but this one in particular goes to NYC's Union Square Climate Clock, and it kind of discusses how we're under 5 years at this point. And so down here, it's split into three broad categories: vegetation, landscape, and bodies of water. So if you click on each one, I'm not going to do it. We're going to go back to the top just so we didn't get lost while we're going through it. But each one does link to the pages for those categories, and it kind of breaks it down here what each one includes. Down here, I wanted to include available scholarship. Like I said, this is more so maybe aimed at academics, and so there's really not a lot of scholarship out there. So I wanted to kind of show that, but also point people in the direction of works that they could kind of access. And then at the very bottom is just the menu down here, but also to contact us, and the non-existent social medias that maybe someday will exist. Back at the top, rather than have like a menu bar across, I did what's called a light box, and that way it's kind of not in the way the whole time. So if we click on vegetation, for example, it takes you to a quote that Tolkien has about that category, and why he thinks it's important, but then also kind of a breakdown of maybe some of the places in his work where he talks about it. And so another element that I incorporated was there's a clip of Tolkien that we actually have talking about his trees. So I thought that was really interesting to kind of put on there, as well as more of his artwork to kind of engage the user. And at the bottom, each page just kind of has a quote about where this is coming from. And that's what the three home pages, kind of landing pages, are going to look like. Underneath that, they're broken up even further. So for the sake of what we did during class, for vegetation, trees was completed, as that's the one that I'm writing my paper about. But more artwork kind of in here, but just once again, links to the PDF, as well as explaining what the page is going to contain. And so, as Dr. Balkan mentioned, we kind of had to have two, as a minimum, DH tools that were incorporated. So I chose word frequency because I found that Tolkien not only has this theme of nature, but that it's mentioned very, very frequently. And so I broke it down into 3 different trends. I'm not sure if they're going to load. They look like they're spinning, but trend A, it speaks only to the volume of tree and trees. And so it doesn't look like you can see it right now, but it's a line graph that kind of will spike where and when and what chapter per se tree and trees are being mentioned based off of the PDF that's linked here. The second trend, it builds on those initial words, but it adds other related words. So forest, for example, Treebeard, which is one of his tree-like characters, anything like that. And then C eliminates any direct mentions of tree or synonyms, and instead it's evaluating the proper names of the crucial trees or forests or any of that throughout Middle-earth. Beneath that, on each page is also a timeline. I wanted to go through, I started to notice a trend in the cover work on his Silmarillion, that a lot of them either featured trees or mountains. So this one kind of goes through all of them, and it breaks it down by publication year, and then it also identifies who the publisher is, as well as what language it is, because even though a lot of them were English, there's quite a few foreign editions, and just kind of go through a few of them so you can get an idea of what this looks like. And also you'll note that all of the photo credits are kind of linked down here, as we talked about rights being important. Okay, looks like the chart's loaded, so this is kind of what they might look like. The other section that I worked on throughout our course was the mountains, and it's exactly set up the same way as the trees, but the word frequency trends just kind of look a little bit different, as do the covers. What else I completed was the About page, and so kind of started as a passion project, but it's driven by necessity, and it kind of more so shifts the focus onto why are we looking at fantasy worlds and works in order to save our own Earth, and what we can learn from them, what the mission is, and the vision going forward. The part that I didn't finish was the bodies of water. This is where Dr. Balkan and I kind of talked about maybe leaving room for expansion, going beyond just like trees and mountains, and recognizing there's a pattern where these 3 kind of intertwine throughout and work together to kind of give this ecological message. But yeah, I think that's pretty much about it. I also have this Let's Chat kind of button at the bottom. So once the user sends that, it'll pop up on the back end of the web page, but also generate an email to my account. So I think that's it. Yeah.
Terrific.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Beth. Any questions? Okay. Yes. Yeah, Martha. Hi.
Hi, I'm sorry I joined
Not at
maybe
all.
just a little late here. Amazing work. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciated the interactiveness of it and how it joined everything together. Um, I have two things. One is, how did you gain the technical knowledge to do this? Because I would like to try something like this with my students.
Hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if Dr. Balkan can maybe speak to it a little bit more on the teaching
You go
end,
right ahead,
right?
Kat.
But I actually worked in web design for 2 years
Hmm.
before I came and did my master's degree. And we had worked with WordPress, which is very different than Wix. And I just, after the headaches that I went through, but also watched, we had to hire a whole other team to kind of help us undo what had been done. And it was a mess. And
Mm,
so what I set out to do was I wanted to teach myself a different platform. And so before I started here at Seton Hall, I built my own website for my own portfolio, and I decided to use Wix. And I
mhm,
kind of spent the summer just playing around with it, seeing what worked, what templates,
mm,
got a feel for it. I watched a lot of YouTube tutorials as well, and I think
mhm,
that was really, really beneficial. So by the time that I got to Dr. Balkan's class, I wasn't as familiar with maybe the digital humanities aspect of it, so like Voyant or the timeline machine creator. But I knew that I wanted to use Wix, and that part was
mhm,
maybe a little bit faster for me. So
mhm, yeah. Yeah, so Martha, I was saying earlier that so in this class, which is an intro to digital humanities class, the first half is theoretical. We talk about digital humanities and as a field, and the second half is a workshop. So they learn how to use tools like, I mean, Voyant is easy peasy. And actually, so are the timeline tools. The Night Lab site has both, you can do story maps, you can do, and really, basically, they are timelines depending on how you build them. We learned how to do all kinds of things. I used to do some more, I used to do things like R, and I stopped doing those and started to do things that were a little more practical. But we look at map making tools. So anything that they might use in the website, I bring people in to teach them. Sometimes people from TLTC. Um, so yeah, so we actually learn how to, but they'll go on and learn. Like I'll show them one map making tool, and I'll say, but here's a list of others. Go take a look because you're going to get a different look with each tool you use. So find one that you like the look of. By the way, Canva is really wonderful in terms of building timelines, right? It's simple. It's free. You can, some things you have to pay for, but you can do amazing work without paying for a thing. So, yeah, so we really is kind of both a theoretical class and a tech class. And I'm in many ways learning along the way with them too. So, I have no problem saying, I've never used this before, but let's give it a go. Let's see how this works.
That's great, Mary. I know someone else has a question,
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
and
Go
this
ahead.
gives me a lot of information. I do
Oh,
agree
good.
with you.
Oh,
Um,
good.
Secondly, I just wanted to point it out with your trees and your mountains and the water. This directly relates into in geology what we call our biological or environmental spheres. And so it not only has this literature and other components to it, but it also relates to science, which
Mhm.
I think is just a comment is wonderful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. As long as you
yeah,
don't
thank you
use
for
the
that.
phrase biodiversity, Beth or Martha, we'll be fine. So
No, no,
I
no.
know, right? Exactly. It's gotten really, really weird out there. So, yeah, Donovan. Thanks,
Hey,
Martha.
thanks. So that was really great, Beth. Thank you so much. And my question is more about the content than the technology, which I find very impressive. But I adore Tolkien as well, and I love any resource to learn more about him. So much of his work is about how in my reading, sometimes it's hard to differentiate what is nature and what isn't. So how did you go about thinking about what constituted nature in a world in which trees can come to life and in which people are imbued with a kind of animistic divine energy and what of the gods, like what separates nature from not nature, and how did you define that?
Yeah, so that is maybe more so involved in the thesis writing, but it definitely comes through here. And I kind of noticed a trend where Tolkien's ecology is kind of viewed in one of three ways. It's either through medievalism or through Catholicism or through war, because he was a soldier. And I realized nobody had really kind of combined the three and said, well, all three kind of relate and inform what he defines as nature. And so there's an article that I do point to in my thesis where the author does raise these questions and says, what do we define as nature? Is it, how did it become non-human? And so I kind of break it down into there's three waves of eco-criticism that you can, some will argue it's two, some will say three, but the first one's very pastoral and maybe more so human-centric, whereas the second is more so social justice and how can we kind of get involved in saving the environment. And the third is that like post-colonial kind of movement. And in keeping, I think, with his Catholic ideologies, but then also tying it into what was being destroyed in the war and what was maybe kind of at the heart of the medieval minds, where the trees and the mountains just kind of kept popping up over and over and over again. And so that's kind of how I landed on those two, if that makes sense.
No, that's great, and thank you. That's a sharper version of the question I asked, which is how did you decide on the terms? So that's really helpful to know. That's how you arrived at mountain, tree, river, all that stuff. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for the questions. All right, so we're going to turn over to, thank you so much, Beth, to Carter. There she is.
Hello.
There they are. Sorry.
That's okay. I appreciate you correcting yourself. Hi, everyone. My name is Carter, as Dr. Balkan has introduced me. I am coming to you from the hallway of the third floor of Fahey, so I apologize if there's doors opening or people talking. Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. So while Sarah and Beth focused more on like an academic or literary type of thing, I used my digital humanities project to make a website for the book that my friend and I are writing. So it's a bit more commercial as opposed to Beth and Sarah's projects. So we start off on the homepage with the working cover design that we have, and then the back matter of the book. So that's just like the little summary that's on the back, that like if you're in a bookstore and you're looking at it, you're like, you read it and you're like, oh, this looks cool, I'm gonna buy it. So that's here on the homepage. Then we also have links to 3 of the pages that I'm not going to click on. We're gonna do the same thing that Beth did and use the bar at the top to navigate so that we don't accidentally get lost. Then we have a short description of what the inspiration behind where everything came from is. And then we have the learn more button, which takes you to the inspiration page. And then we have the YouTube video that started it all linked right there. It is 45 minutes, so I'm not going to open it. And as many modern new adult high fantasy books start, we do start with a prophecy that has to do with the magic in the world dying. That's the overarching conflict throughout the series. So we'll just go in order. So first we have the author page. So I have my own bio, and then my best friend Lindsay, we have her bio. Here we have buttons for both of our individual author sites that don't exist right now. So they don't go to anything. One of the DH tools that I used was a word tracker called TrackBear, that came out in response to all of the craziness of National Novel Writing Month last year. So it was very fun to use. And this is a screenshot of the tracker as of the 10th of December at 11 p.m., where the word count for everything was over 100,000 words. Currently, with the finished first draft and the supplemental short stories and everything, I think we're sitting at about 170,000. So it has since expanded greatly. But two of the questions that both of us get very frequently is how does the co-authoring process work for the two of you, and how did you choose each other to work with? So the short answer for how does the co-authoring process work is Lindsay and I will sit on FaceTime in a Google Doc and play Pong with each other, where I'll write until I don't have anything else to say, and then she will pick up exactly where I left off. And the reason why this works so well, and also the reason why we chose to work with each other on this, is because our authorial voices are very similar. So it's actually a very seamless transition between when I'm writing and when she's writing, and when she's writing and when I'm writing. So it's really cool to experience and do. So our world building and fantasy and magic system is based off of Norse mythology. So we have 9 realms, just like Yggdrasil, which is the tree of life with the 9 realms. So each realm has a specific type of magic that's tied to it, and we have the little descriptions. And then at the bottom, we have the like map of the realms. They don't actually look like this on a map together, like they're not in the same plane of existence. Um, but we figured that this would be a good way to like conceptualize what each realm looks like. And then we have Larithor proper in the middle, which is like the middle of the realm, so it would be like the trunk of Yggdrasil. And then we have the inspiration page, which was very fun to make. Um, so we have a little bit of what the inciting incident for the beginning of the book is, and then we have a little quote from the prologue, I believe. That might have changed, so we might need to update that. And then Lindsay made a massive Spotify playlist that is like 18 hours long, and it's organized by songs for each character. And you can access it by clicking on any of the links here. If you wanted to listen to it while you're browsing through the website, you're more than welcome to do that. You just hit the little play button right here. And then we have what the story is projected to be. So it's planned to be a 5-novel series. We're going to see how that works. And we also have supplemental short stories that will fill in some of the background that you won't necessarily get from the books themselves. And one of them is actually finished. And if you are on this website, you could click the little button and read it. It just opens into a Google Doc in a new tab. So next, we have little character profiles. So I used like the fandom wiki setup sort of as inspiration for this. So one of the common threads between a lot of the ones that I looked at were that they had individual character profiles on the pages. And because it's a high fantasy, there are a lot of characters. So we have the king at the beginning, who, not a spoiler, he dies at the end. That's the first line of the prophecy. And then we have the general, and then if you wanted to not have to scroll through 35 people, we have the competitors. So we have our main girl, Fern. She's one of our POV characters, and she's also the title character. And then we have Halvard, who is our second POV character. I am not going to go through all of them because there are a lot. And then scroll down to the council members, and then we have the companions at the bottom. And Erica is our third POV character. The reason why she is not first is because Quimby is introduced before she is. So, yes, okay. And then, so because this manuscript is literally massive and we were not going to finish it by the end of last semester, what Dr. Balkan and I talked about doing was chapter summaries. And also because like you don't want to put an unfinished manuscript out into the world because of like IP and copyright infringement and everything, and like we don't want people to steal our ideas. So on like the back end of things, it's useful for people who maybe started reading the book and then put it down and were at like chapter 16 and are like, oh my gosh, I don't want to have to reread 16 chapters. So they can go through here and see the summaries for each of the chapters that they don't remember. um, is there anything else on this page? No, there is not. Awesome. Okay, and then the last page that we have is the contact us page. I was a little cheeky here, and I was like, do you want a campaign to save your favorite character? Because as is also common in most new adult fantasy series, several people die. Um, so if people wanted to, they could submit a little email and be like, please keep this one alive. We're not going to listen to them, but we can make them feel like we are. And then we have this little form, which is the same as the button that's at the bottom of every page. We also have our social media linked. So we have my Twitter, Lindsay's Twitter, and then my author Instagram. And I did post something earlier. So we actually, it's not going to let me show it to you. We actually got the first copy of our book printed through Barnes & Noble Press. I do not have it with me. It is lost somewhere in my apartment currently. Otherwise, I would love to show you guys, but it's really cool to like hold in our hands because then it feels like an actual book. And I think that is everything from me. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, and they finished the book and everything. It's very exciting. So, any questions about this project for Carter? Okay. So I thought I would take a minute or two that which we've got just to show you maybe a few of the other projects very quickly. So I pulled some that were a little again they're all different actually. So there were 11 students in this class. Actually one undergraduate. And he was fine. Beginning he was sort of freaking out a little bit, but he was okay. You have to kind of assure him or them, anybody, when it's like 10 graduate students and an undergraduate said, listen, we're all in the same boat at this point. We're all starting pretty much from scratch. Nobody really, has a lot of advanced knowledge about any of this material. So let me see. So I thought I'd show you this one. Okay. This is so this was a project developed by one of our creative writing students in the MA program. This is from Blake Harsh, who apparently has had an abiding love of the moon for a long, long time. Who knew? So you will learn all kinds of interesting things about students in these kinds of classes. So, but she decided to build a website about moon poetry. So you can go up here again. So that was the other thing. I think they would agree with me. The building is not as hard as the planning. You have to really, and I used to keep saying to them over, I don't think anybody listened to me, but I'm very visual. I mean, I would have drawings like, okay, I need this here, this is going to go here. But I'd say to them, you need to figure out what this is going to look like because changing it later is just a pain and tough. So a lot of it is just figuring out how you're going to do sort of your menu at the top, what's going to be in there. And then again, for the most part, many of them did say, TBA coming soon kind of thing. So, because these are out there, you can find them. What Blake did was she basically divided moon poetry into two different kinds. She has the crater and then she has the glow. And so you can also go through it up here. So you can go down here. So she has poems that are listed by theme. So she decided to find poems that are about childhood and the moon, grief and consolation, hope, and so on. So again, all of these are live links. So if you click on it, you get to this link to the Man in the Moon poem by Billy Collins. And my understanding. So if you click on it, yep, there you go. So it'll take you right to the poem. So, again, a lot of planning, a lot of figuring out how you're going to do this, and also a lot of figuring out how much can you do in again, I'm saying 7 to 8 weeks because by the time you get underway, you're already close to the midterm point of the semester. And the other thing that I thought was really so cool about all of these projects was as I think Martha, somebody mentioned, interactivity. right? So people can not only contact them for suggestions or questions, but in this case, Blake was also asking for submissions, people asking for ideas, people asking for feedback. And as Sarah was saying, right, people contributing, literally contributing to this, whether it's translations and so on. So that was one. I thought that was kind of fun. So maybe just one more in the time we've got. I have to go to my project links. I had opened it, but I don't really see it. So I'm going to open it again and then I'll share because these things happen, right? The sharing feature in Teams I find very annoying. So let me see if I go here, if it comes up right at the top. Yep, there we go. So again, very different from what everybody else did. Um, so this is again another MA student. This is Hannah Gray, and she lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I had no idea. I don't know if anybody else in the class had any idea that Tulsa is basically like the center of Art Deco architecture in the country, with a huge number of maintained Art Deco buildings, and all conflated right there in that one city. So she had, again, we're talking, she said something like 25 or so buildings. You can't do all of them because, so the whole goal was, can you complete a piece of this in its entirety, a piece of this project, right? And so in her case, she picked 4 locations. So Phil Tower, Philcade, and these two. And so there's a little image gallery, so you can see more images from some of the stuff here in Tulsa, just architect, I'm sorry, Art Deco architecture, right? Beautiful, unbelievable. Actually, I've been in Tulsa. I completely forgot I had been in Tulsa till recently, but I don't think we really didn't get out a lot. It was a conference. So lots of different images that she's got that you can scroll through. And again, I really like this idea. If you have any questions, you can email. She's got a section here on Tulsa's Art Deco history, so you can learn a little bit more about, why is Tulsa sort of this Art Deco destination? Who knew? She's got, stuff from the Tulsa Foundation for Architecture, a little bit of a blurb there. And again, a lot, we said to, you need to tell people what this project is about. There's Hannah with mom and dad. Give it a little personal touch. They, generally all have pictures of themselves in there somewhere. So anyway, so these are just a few more of the things. There was one on Gothic literature. Let's see. Oh, there was well, one was about basically a kind of cult-like college that one of our students attended prior to coming to Seton Hall, and some very interesting things going on there. Let's see what else. One student continued a project she had actually been doing for me in a prior course on infanticide in early America. So again, somebody did something on the Court of Chancery from the Victorian period. And so, lots of cool stuff. So, questions or comments or okay. All right. Oh, there we go. Martha.
Yes, with this vast variety of topics, do
Mhm.
they come to the class with a topic already, or do they, like in those first week or two, decide and make a
Mhm.
proposal? And I do
Yeah,
understand that, yeah, you have to rapidly get on this,
right.
as you do in the case-based studies in my class. If you wait until past
Oh
midterm,
yeah,
it's
no.
very, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, basically I tell them or ask, what are you interested in? What do you love? What's your passion? What's something you can spend the next, 7, 8 weeks or more spending a lot of time on? And yeah, and they all did. They found so in some cases, as in Beth's case, it can be connected to a thesis, which is perfectly fine. Again, Carter was already working on this project, so yeah, they generally don't. Once I open the gates and say it doesn't have to be about literature, it can be about anything. That's really, I think, when all the problems sort of go away. Yeah, that kind of just opens the door. You can write, you can work, make this about it. So there are other project options, which again, nobody took advantage of. One is adding to an existing project. a web project that's out there, and another one is to take part in more of a crowdsourcing project, right? So there's oh what's it called? Zooniverse, by the way. By the way, Martha, you should know Zooniverse, right? Has a lot of science projects on it that you can participate in. And one semester I had a student who did that, and there were records in there, identification cards from, oh God, I think it was might have been Treblinka, one of the concentration camps, and during the Holocaust, and transcribing them. They were handwritten. Type it out and all that. So, yeah. So I give them those three options. It doesn't have to be Zooniverse, but they can add to an existing project. They can add to a digital project that's already out there. I have one going on, but they all chose to build something this time. It's luck of the draw. So yeah, Angela.
Thank you. I think these are really wonderful projects, and I've seen a couple of them before, but it's really fun to see them again. And so I guess I'd like to know what you see the futurity of these projects as being. I mean, do you plan to work on them further? What do you imagine them ultimately being like? I mean, in some ways, Carter, yours is the most obvious, publicity for the book project, which you're hoping to get a publisher for other than Barnes and Noble self-published, right? Um, somebody will do all the dirty work for you, but you've done most of it for them. But what do you see the future of these sites as being? I mean, do you imagine that you will continue to work on them, that you'll build them, that they will die a sad death the minute you leave graduate
They
school?
might. They might, like many websites.
Yeah.
I can kind of start. A big part of, I think, of academia, and we kind of talk about this in Dr. Balkan's class, is that ivory tower and how it's kind of exclusive and who has access to what. And a lot of the works that I was trying to access were locked behind like excessive paywalls of like $80 or more. And I'm like, I'm a broke grad student. I don't have that kind of money to pay to look at it for like 10 minutes, right? So I think that that's kind of, I think, coming at it from that student perspective of I've been denied access to articles or websites that I really, really want to engage with. I would like to keep working on this. I think that there's a lot of really interesting connections, and like I said, like I had bodies of waters and shrubs and what defines a hill versus a mountain, right? But also just making it kind of accessible to the masses, whether that be, like I said, I had Tolkien scholars in mind, so whether that be other scholars or just people that are interested in learning about this but don't have other means of doing so.
You. Sarah, Carter?
I can go next.
Mhm.
So having another closely related creative outlet to a big writing project is always something that I have found to be very helpful. Um, Especially because writing words in a Google document for 8 hours is kind of awful a lot of the time. Uh, so having something else to work on would be something else to like exercise the other brain muscles. And it's also this like archive of all of the things that Lindsay and I have done and like put together. Um, so I am planning to continue working on it. If nothing else for the pitching convenience of, hey, here's this huge website that I built for the lore of the book. But like as the series progresses, I'm hoping to have like each book will have like its own page where it'll have like all of the information, and then it'll be organized a lot nicer. And it'll be more condensed, and we'll have like little trivia fun facts or like
Fan art. There'll be fan art.
yeah, we already have some art that's in the works of getting commissioned. It's gorgeous. I love all of it so far. And we'll have like, because a lot of our book is dealing with a lot of like political topics, and it's got a lot of like political intrigue where there's like um the abolition of natives and the definition of like who's a person versus who's lesser than, and then the sense of like, is this extreme justice, does that match the crime of like what they've done? So there's also opportunities to have a lot of like book club questions that are already like pre-chosen, just in case Reese Witherspoon wants to choose us or Oprah. But I think also having that where it's like it's not just a silly little fantasy book aspect, I think would be very fun and also would make it a little bit more academic leaning so that like Dr. Enright's Faith and Fantasy class, it's a work of fantasy that you can engage with in a literary manner. So that's where I'm hoping to bring it from.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks. Sarah?
Yeah, so it was a big challenge already getting that far for me. Um, but I think that what I look forward is to bring that not just to the United States, to the academic setting here, but also back in Brazil. When I was searching and doing looking for articles or people who could help already or collaborate, I already reached to some like professors back in my university in Brazil, and they were already like so excited about it, like wow, we are bringing all this literature out of our country and making a name and things like that. So it's really, which is really important for us, because describes the context and so many things of our culture and history. And then I think that when in my proposal, the idea is that the website can go to the curriculum, the academic settings, and like high schools where they can already use that in like in both classes. Doesn't need to be just literature classes, but also we have English Portuguese classes there, right? So it's also something that we can use, or we have other classes that is also something that we explore. um, and I think that's what I'm looking for with my project. I know that is a long way, especially because I don't know how it works to like definitely put the website out there. But I do believe that's a good idea, and that's something that me and I it was something that me and Dr. Balcon talked about it. That is something very unique when I looked for.
Hmm.
So when I put on the Google looking for something that I could use as my reference, I didn't have any, not focusing on Brazilian literature. So it's very unique, and that's why I think that I can keep working on that, and there's a value there.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no, I agree. Definitely a value there. Yeah, Dan?
You.
Yeah, I know we're probably at the end of the time, and I didn't. I think even though I had a couple questions, I just want to say thank you guys for putting yourself out there. It's brave, to display your work and to share, the trials and tribulations and what you're proud of about it. And just to follow on Dr. Weisel's question about the futurity, it seems like there's really communities that you can enter or help to generate through this work. All of you, Elizabeth and Sarah, reaching out to, sort of, we know there's fan fiction, and that's something that is obviously really great for creative people and for involving the society as a whole, but also, like you said, being a resource to people who are just interested but don't have access to things. I think it's wonderful, and just want to praise you for that.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Dan. That's really nice. Thank you. Yeah, actually, so we're gonna have to sign off because I have a class to head to in a little while, but thank you so much for coming. Thank you again to Beth and Sarah and Carter for agreeing to do this. It's a busy semester. They're all right in the middle of it, either teaching, doing theses, or whatever. So thank you again for giving up this time, and thank you folks for joining us. This was really great. I did record it. So, Martha, if there's a place to put any of this stuff for Petersheim stuff, just let me know. But I'm going to stop the recording now, just because I always forget to do that.